To share my screen. Okay, what do I want to do here? From beginning. Cool. So welcome everyone to our Q&A night for applying to grad school. We've really structured tonight based on questions that you might have. And so we do have prepared content, but that's just a heads up. Really tonight, we want to leave lots of space for maybe specific questions that you might have about this process or about particular programs. Before we get into that, maybe we should introduce ourselves. Eden, would you like to introduce yourself? And if so, the floor is yours. And if not, that's totally cool too. Yeah, so maybe I'll just say, Eden, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can definitely go ahead and do that. Thank you, Becky, for a little introduction. Just quickly turn on the camera. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to meet you and so exciting that we have so many students joining us today. As Becky said, my name is Eden, or you can call me Eden. I go by both, and my pronouns are she and her. Couple things about me. I am the other further ed advisor in CCA. I am a lover of all things food. So anything food related, I want to try it. New restaurants in our region, I'm there. And aside from that, I love playing sports, big into fitness and spending time with my friends and family. And I'm also facilitating, live and work on, as well as study on the territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. I will be in the background here today helping Becky, as Becky will be facilitating and leading us through the presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Eden. My name is Becky. My pronouns are she and her. I am the counterpart to Eden, and we partner on the further education portfolio at CCA. Some things about me as a human. I make wind chimes from thrifted materials. I love apple crisp. I love swimming with my dog, who you see pictured here, but like obviously we're not swimming. Well, maybe swimming in snow a little bit. Usually in the winter, I make, I don't know, big snowballs, and my dog Vinny loves to kind of eat them or shred them a little bit. I also am facilitating from the territories of the Neutral, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. To me, it's important to physically situate myself where I'm living, working, also studying from, because it's one part of my personal practice of reconciliation. Okay. I'm also wondering, because I know we did want to record this session and I don't know if that has started yet. So maybe before I move forward, I'll ask if that recording has started, and if not, maybe now's the time.
Yeah, the recording started.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to start with some questions, or an opportunity for you to ask questions. And so I'm going to maybe quickly stop sharing. I'm going to copy and paste a link into the chat. And the link I'm going to post in the chat is to a Padlet. Okay, so it's to a Padlet, and you can literally type in as many questions as you want to this Padlet. And let's see, where did my Padlet go? Right here. So yeah, maybe we'll just take, I don't know, maybe a minute or two to post whatever questions you might be having about grad school. Maybe it's about, you know, something in terms of the process of applying. Maybe it's about funding. Maybe it's about timelines, reference letters. Maybe it's like you have a super specific question about a program you know you want to apply to. So yeah, feel free to post whatever you're wondering. And this is kind of where we'll start today. Okay, yeah, specific econ grad programs, great. Yeah. Ask for reference letter or recommendation letters. Totally. When to start even this whole process? Absolutely. Oh, difference between a resume and CV is such a great question. Yeah, what year you should start applying? Awesome. We'll give it another minute maybe before we start tackling some of these. Ooh, yeah, extra photos. Yeah,
I want you to eat.
Just a
Can you give me my
reminder.
answer my phone?
Just a reminder to maybe mute yourself. Oh, thanks to whoever in the chat resent the link. Thank you. I did not see that. Cool. Okay, so I know some folks are still typing, and maybe let's get into some of these. Okay. So maybe let's start with preparing applications. I got some content because I figured, you know, there might be some questions around this. Okay. Cool. So when to start applying? Yeah, okay. So this really depends on the program. Could be towards the end of the year, November, December for the following fall start date. It could also be near the beginning of the year. So maybe you submit your application January, February for that same fall start date. And then there could be this other tricky possibility of rolling admission during a window of time. And so the really tricky thing about grad school applications is that when you apply, the process to apply, what you have to submit, literally all depends on the individual program. But these are some possibilities. One thing I might say about rolling admission is, so let's say the rolling admission opens January and closes March. It might be a good idea in that rolling admission timeline to apply closer to January rather than leaving it to March. And that's because the admissions committee might be reviewing applications as they come in. So there might be the most amount of positions to a program in January. And the longer you wait during that rolling admission period, conceivably the less amount of positions in that program might be left. So these are the three possibilities, maybe towards the end of the year for a fall start date, beginning of the year for a fall start date, rolling admission. In terms of when during your undergrad you might want to apply, I would say most often folks apply. Do I want to say most often? Okay, maybe I have two categories of folks. One, folks graduate from their undergrad, then they're like, you know what? I need a break because undergrad, that was a lot. So I'm going to take some time and spend, my time doing something else other than academics. Maybe they wait a year, maybe they wait 2 years, maybe they wait 3, 4, 5 years, and then they apply to grad school. So that's like one category of folks I see. The other category of folks I see are people who apply in their, 4th, 5th, 6th year, however many years it takes you to do your undergraduate degree, to apply in that last year. So you're applying January of your last year of your undergrad to start your graduate degree the upcoming fall term. So that's kind of when I see folks most often applying to grad school. Okay. I'm seeing some things in the chat, but I'm gonna hop back over to our Padlet real quick. New share. Okay, what else do we got here? So I think that I'm hoping that covers when you might apply. In terms of when you start preparing your application, again, that's going to depend on when the application is due. It could also depend on what is involved in that application. If it's, just simply, I don't know, maybe an application, an online application that you fill out that asks, program choice, maybe some demographic information about you. Maybe it asks you to input courses and grades. If it's minimal like that, in terms of you're not writing, you're not submitting resumes, personal statements, you can judge how much time that might take you versus an application that's asking for, I don't know, a 500-word personal statement, 3 letters of recommendation, and a resume. That might take you a bit more time. And maybe if it's due in January, maybe, I don't know, I always like to give myself more time. So I personally would probably give myself 6 months because I'm a super stressed case and I do not love when things are unfinished. But that's me personally. Okay. Let's see here. Maybe let's hop over to, I might hop over to this extracurricular question about, what extracurriculars are grad schools looking for and how involved do we need to be? I'm going to sound like a broken record, so I apologize in advance because I'm going to literally say this so many times. It depends on the program. If you are applying to a research-based graduate program in which you will either be writing a major research project or a master's thesis, and the program page, is all about research, heavily says like, folks bring an already established research practice to this program. It might be a good idea to reflect on, okay, what research experience do I have already, which like you don't go through an undergrad degree without getting research experience, whether that's like individual projects or group projects for your courses. Maybe you're writing, research papers or literary essays. You don't get out of undergrad without developing and refining your research practice in your discipline. But there might be additional ways that you want to grow or add to that research practice. Could also be a grad program, maybe if it's, maybe one of the values is community care. So thinking through, okay, what do I do in my time to support my community? And that might be, I don't know, one example that's coming to my mind because this is an activity I personally do. I practice yoga. And one way I support my community is by exchanging my time to help out that yoga studio for free yoga classes. But that's one way I might contribute to my community is supporting the folks at the yoga studio in, I don't know, whatever they need support with. But this could look all different ways. So it really depends on the program. Maybe there might be specific prerequisites you need to meet, and maybe there might be softer prerequisites in terms of extracurriculars. Okay. I'm going to take a peek here. We have lots on CVs, differences there, a bit on funding. Okay. Is April too late to submit your application? This might depend when the application is due. So if the program, let's say the program had an application deadline of I don't know, February, and you're submitting in April, you wouldn't be submitting for the following September. You'd be submitting for like the next year. So it might really just depend on when that program deadline is. Okay. How late is it too late for joining extracurriculars? I mean, I don't think it's ever too late. One thing you might find for grad programs, they might give qualifiers if they want you to be having some extracurricular experience. So one thing I've seen is some programs will put a specific like timestamp on how long you need to have been doing that extracurricular for, I don't know, I guess it to be evidence that you have some sort of investment or dedication to that extracurricular. So sometimes, you know, it'll be like you need 100 hours, I don't know, volunteering in this capacity or in this kind of organization or business or something like that. Whereas other programs are like, we literally don't care the amount of time that you've been doing it. So those are two possibilities. And yeah, I would, you know, I would say it comes back to the program.
Becky, I
Great.
just saw in the chat that I think the person who was asking about if April was too late, they're wondering if April was too late for a May 15th deadline.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jen, for clarifying that. I mean, my question to you would be like, how do you feel about starting your application now? You know, thinking, I get this question all the time when I'm supporting students and alumni in applying to grad school. And if it doesn't feel like it's too late for you in terms of, you know, crafting those application materials, certainly it's not too late to reach out to folks to write letters of references or recommendation for you. It's not too late for that. And so, yeah, if this, you know, if that application and going through that process is something that you want to put on your plate right now, I say go for it. If after you reflect and I'm like, no, I already have like a bajillion commitments, I don't need another thing, that's also a valid choice. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, yes, yes, yes. We are totally going to talk about CVs, which is more important, work experience or extracurriculars. Again, it might depend on the program. And let's see, I don't think there are some grad programs that, you know, say you need some sort of evidence that you have experience doing X or you have experience in this field. Sometimes that can be a mixture of paid work and volunteer work and extracurriculars. Other times programs will get more specific and it's like, no, you need to like be working in this area and receive pay for the work that you do. So again, I would default to the program page there. In terms of, let's see, how to select grad programs, I might hop back over to our presentation. Okay, let's see. I know I have a slide on this somewhere. And where did I put it? Okay. When should I apply? Okay, yeah, right here. Got it. Oh, my mouse is disappearing on me. Cool. There we go. Okay. So in terms of like finding a program that matches kind of what you're looking for, there's probably more than one program that matches what you want. And there are several ways that you might narrow down your choices. And kind of here are some possibilities for finding a grad program that matches what you want. So I would, I don't know, first start with an internet search if you're like, I don't know where to search for programs, period. Definitely a Google search is your friend. There's also 2 databases here. educanada.ca will search all college and university programs in Canada. Find a master's can be really useful if you're looking at grad school outside of Canada. So those are 2 options in terms of where to start looking for programs. In terms of, how the heck do I narrow down on what's available? You might look at the curriculum of the grad program. So let's say your jam is when you get to situate what you're learning in real life. So maybe you're going to specifically look for graduate programs that have some sort of practicum or internship or co-op component, right? So you're like, nope, if it doesn't have it, it's not worth my time, not going to even look at it. That could be one way. Maybe you specifically want a course-based master's. That means, I'm not going to look at any of the research-based programs. So I would say that that could be a good place to start is, what's the curriculum of the program? You might also look at the research areas and the research specialties of the professors who work in that department if you are considering a research-based program. Because where you apply will likely be tied to what you want to research and what faculty, if any, are in that department that can support that research. You might also look at, is there available funding? So this is common with research-based programs, not to say that it isn't possible for course-based, and it's much more common with research-based. And that's having some sort of guaranteed or baseline funding package. It's not a lot of money by any means. You usually still have to pay tuition, and your funding is dispersed to you most often through a combination of teaching assistantships or research assistantships. So it's not just like, here, have this chunk of money, go live your best full life. Most of that funding you will receive through your labor. And then you might also look at location. Where do you want to live for 1.5 to 2-ish years of your life? So it might be important for a variety of reasons that you stay in a specific location. So that could be a really, intuitive way to filter, how do I narrow down programs? Affordable housing, I would say, is another one as well, in terms of where you're thinking of grad school. Is it affordable for any type of housing in that city? Does the university itself have residences allocated for graduate students? Do they have residents allocated for graduate students with families? So those could be some of the ways that you narrow down a program that matches what you want. Some of this information you will be able to find on the program page. And when you can't find that information, because university and college websites are notorious for not being transparent, there's a couple different ways that you can get more transparent information. And that's by reaching out to the school or the program. So you're going to be looking for someone with a title like graduate admissions, or a graduate advisor or graduate coordinator. Maybe they're called a recruitment advisor. And these are usually dedicated staff members. This is their full job. They get paid to support current and prospective students to that program. So usually there's an email. Sometimes it's a specific person's name, so Becky.Anderson@uwaterloo.ca. Other times it's more general, Waterloo admissions at uwaterloo.ca. But I would say that's your best bet for finding very specific information about the program, or if you have questions that you can't find on the program page, always reach out to the program. The last possibility is information sessions. So these usually happen sometime between August, September, October, because a lot of the time grad school admission application deadlines are January, February. So in the fall term, they'll have some sort of info session. The last 2 years, these have been online. It's been super convenient for folks to like attend because you don't have to relocate your body in time and space. I don't know if that's a practice that grad programs will continue moving forward. I hope so, because I'm guessing a lot more folks were able to attend those. So that could be something either to ask a program or a department when you're reaching out is, hey, do you have any upcoming info sessions? Will they be virtual? Okay, I'm gonna hop back to our Padlet. So let's see. You can apply for OSAP for graduate programs. Maybe what I'll put in the chat is, okay, yeah, I'm showing the right page. So I'm gonna put a link in the chat to our further education resources. There's this really handy doc that Eden and I update periodically for graduate scholarship opportunities. And so there's a bunch here for masters and for PhD. We've broken them up by international applicants, folks with PR status, and folks with Canadian citizenship, because most often for scholarships, those are the three kind of categories under which you might have to apply. Some of these scholarships require that you have applied for OSAP. And so I'll put this link in the chat because I would definitely say bookmark that for future use. And while we're on here, there's some other lovely resources as well. The Writing Your Personal Statement workshop and our graduate school workshop series, which if you didn't have a chance to view or read the transcript for today's event, we go into a lot of detail about like the main topics that might come up when you're thinking about grad school. Okay, let's go back to our Padlet. Where is my Padlet? Let's see. Okay. Cool. Okay, here we are. What else? What else? Maybe, okay. Maybe let's chat a little bit about CVs and resumes. So definitely the page I shared, bookmark for the future, because we are going to be producing some more asynchronous content on CVs and resumes. I can say maybe some high level differences between these two documents. Oftentimes programs use these words interchangeably. They do mean different things. And usually graduate programs aren't picky about whether you submit an academic CV versus a resume. So resume is more so your profile of your employment history, whereas an academic CV is a document that specifically records your activities that might be that admissions committees might want to know about in terms of your academic career. You might be thinking like, wait a second, I don't want to be in academia. I don't want to be a tenure track prof. I don't blame you. That job market's a little bit of a hot mess. And so when you're drafting either a resume or a CV for a grad program, usually you can submit either or. And if you do want to submit an academic CV, that's also possible. Oftentimes an academic CV is going to be much more focused towards your research experience, maybe your teaching experience. And teaching is, I'm using that broadly. So whether it's, I don't know, you homeschool your kids, or you teach swimming lessons, or you're an undergraduate TA, or I don't know, you maybe you teach your neighbor or You teach your neighbor, I don't know, how to, I don't know, shovel the sidewalk or something. I'm thinking my neighbor is like currently teaching his grandkids how to do these activities. So that's where that example is coming from. So teaching loosely defined. The other thing that academic CVs really, a section that may or may not be on your academic CV if you are coming out of an undergraduate degree is a publications section. I don't know many undergraduate folks who do have publications. So if you're like sitting here like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to sweat, I don't got publications. That's okay. I don't have publications either. And I'm in a PhD program. So it's not super common. If you have them, wonderful. And if you don't have them, you're among great company. I'm just going to tune into the chat because I see some stuff coming up. Okay. More so where to access the recording than a question for me. Great, cool. So maybe I will share, there's a resource I'm thinking of specifically. Oops. Okay, if you haven't been on Career Hub, this could be a place to find information. I put it in the chat. You'll have to log in with your WhatIM. You do get access both as a current student and an alumni. This is a great starting place. This is not the be all and end all of advice. And so if you go to apply interview and you scroll, I mean, there is a section on resumes, but if you scroll to the bottom, there's also a section on writing your CV. So again, this is a starting point. Just because it's on Career Hub doesn't mean you need to follow it. And so, I don't know, if you find it helpful to have a starting place, this can be maybe a good spot for that. In terms of maybe some other differences between CVs and resumes. Resumes, you usually stick to 1 to 2 pages. Academic CVs, there's literally no page limit. Your CV could be 20 pages, and that's fine. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like 1 page, or maybe it's 3. That's cool too. So yeah, those are some like high level differences. You can often use a lot of the same information in your resume, in your CV, but oftentimes you'll have to organize it in different ways because these are 2 different types of documents with 2 different purposes. So if there are like follow-up questions for resumes and CVs, please do let me know. Is this session only about Waterloo grad programs or just grad programs in general? Grad programs in general. If, you know, when you access further education support, either as a current student or as an alumni, I would say most of the folks I support aren't applying to Waterloo grad programs. So we help you apply to any sort of program, whether it's, you know, college, a college program, a master's program, a PhD program, and whether it's at the University of Waterloo or literally any other university anywhere in the world, or college anywhere in the world. Okay, maybe let's hop over to asking for reference letters. Okay, I'm gonna hop back over to my presentation. And let's skip forward a little bit. Okay, so asking for a reference letter. On the screen, you'll see 6 questions here. These are the most, these are the questions that come up most often when I chat with folks about reference letters. So who to ask? I would say first and foremost, ask someone that you trust, that you know will be able to say supportive and lovely and wonderful things about you when they are writing their letter of reference. So person you trust, first and foremost. I would say next, in terms of thinking about who to ask, depends on the program. So sometimes grad programs want 3 academic references. So that means you need to ask 3 folks, from your undergraduate courses. Sometimes programs are specific about who they want to hear from in an academic reference. So sometimes they will say, we want 3 academic letters of reference from a faculty member. And when you see that, that word faculty member, they really want to hear from people who are either assistant professors, associate professors, or capital P professors. This can be a little bit, this is the difficult thing about academic reference letters, is that a lot of the times when you're taking courses, you might be being taught by a sessional instructor. A sessional instructor oftentimes has the same academic credential as an assistant, associate, or full professor, but what they lack is the job security, because as I said earlier, academic job market, bit of a trash fire. So programs can be picky about who they want to hear from. The other reason I say this too is sometimes you'll have a PhD or a master's student teaching you a course. And so who to ask in terms of an academic reference letter, again, it might depend on the program. Some are super lovely and they're like, we just want to hear from someone who taught you in an undergraduate course, in which case literally ask anyone who has taught you an undergraduate course, whether they are a tenured professor or a grad student or a sessional instructor. Grad programs also might want a combination. So sometimes they say we want 1 academic, 1 professional, 1 your choice. I've also seen, we want a professional reference. We want a reference from like, I don't know, a volunteer experience or an experience where you were involved in your community. And then 1 your choice. So who do you ask? Kind of depends a little bit on the program. How do you ask? Email is a great place to start. I would say even before COVID, folks would usually send an email to be like, hey, I'm thinking about applying to grad school. The reason I'm contacting you is because, I don't know, you're my undergraduate thesis advisor, or I took a course from you in 2nd year, or I took a course from you last term, or I'm taking a course with you this term. So doing a bit of like reminding that person why you're asking them, what context you know each other from. Maybe specifying, could you write me a positive letter of recommendation for grad school? You might share in this email things like if you have it drafted, you might share your personal statement. If you don't have that drafted, that's okay. You can share generally your motivations for wanting to apply to the program or programs that you're interested in. You can share your resume or CV. Sometimes folks also share their unofficial transcripts. And again, this is why it's important to ask someone who you trust, because that can feel very, like, what do you mean? You want me to show someone my grades? Like, that feels, I don't know, that feels a little personal, and it totally is. So I would say it's up to you whether you share those transcripts up front or not. Okay. What if I feel uncomfortable asking? Yeah, totally. That's normal. I think part of what's wrapped up in asking for reference letters is that power dynamic, right? Especially because if this person says no, like, that can be really defeating, right? So if you feel uncomfortable asking, that's 100% okay. Literally everyone feels uncomfortable asking. When you are asking for those letters, it's also helpful maybe to ease some of that anxiety around asking. Literally, the person you're asking has had to ask someone else for a letter of reference at some point in their life to get where they are today. So that can be helpful to maybe have operating in the back of your mind, like, this is a normal thing, happens all the time, and literally this person had to go through this process. When should you ask? Again, This depends on maybe your timeline for applying. I always caution folks to leave more time than what you think. I would definitely say minimum 1 month. More is great. I think I asked professors 5 months in advance of when I was applying. But as I've said, I'm a stress case and don't like when things are unfinished. So I always leave myself more time. The other benefit of leaving yourself a little bit more time is if that person happens to say no, you've given yourself some breathing room to find somebody else to ask. When professors or, professional references or, references of your choice, when they say no, it's usually for a reason. That reason could be, I don't know, life is hectic for them right now. There might be like 10 billion things going on, and maybe they don't have the time and capacity to dedicate to writing you a really lovely letter. It could be they feel they don't know you enough, right? They can't speak enough to what the admissions committee wants to hear from. And so, that is possible, but when people say no, it's usually for a reason. And then I always go back to ask someone you trust, because usually if you're asking someone that, you trust, or I don't know, maybe you have some sort of prior context with them, that that possibility of saying no probably decreases by a lot. What happens if they don't reply to me? Again, if you leave yourself a bit more time, if you don't get a reply, that could be for a number of reasons, and it is totally normal to follow up, right? So if you send an email, I don't know, 3 weeks have passed. That's just like a random amount of time I've said. 3 weeks have passed. You can absolutely be like, hey, checking in, wondering if this might be possible, right? And then you might also start to think of, okay, who else should I ask? Because this person, I don't know, something's happening in their life right now where they are not as accountable to their email. And so maybe it feels safer for you to have maybe a backup person to ask. Okay, I'm gonna hop back to our Padlet. If I have no one to ask, what should I do? This is such a great question. And I would say this question would be a perfect thing to chat about, either in a further education drop-in or a further education, a 1-hour booked appointment. This does come up a lot in when I'm supporting folks applying to grad school. And I guarantee you we can find someone or multiple someones to write you a letter of reference. It might just, we probably need to have a conversation and do some reflection on, maybe what professors or what volunteer folks or what maybe professional folks you might want to ask. So if you feel like you don't have anyone to ask, please fill out the further education booking form, which I will put in the chat before we end today. Okay, let's take a peek. For psych grad programs, are you required to take the GRE? Great question. And I would say for any graduate program, are you required to take the GRE? Depends on the program. The GRE has become a much less popular thing in recent years, which I think is lovely, because who wants another hoop to jump through when you're applying to grad school? I've seen GRE requirements most often when you might be, let's say, a grad program might say, if your undergraduate degree is not from an accredited university where the primary language of instruction is English, then take the GRE. But if you have an undergraduate degree where from an accredited university where the primary language of instruction is English, you're fine. You don't need to take the GRE. And so I would say for folks here, the GRE probably isn't a requirement for your program. If you don't see any information on taking the GRE on a grad school program, likely because you don't have to take it. And if you're worried, you can always reach out to the program. If a program says that the GRE is optional, I would say that probably means it's your choice. And the GRE costs money, and you pay for it. You're charged in US dollars, so it's even more money for folks who don't have an American bank account. And it takes some extra, I don't know, maybe it takes some extra time to study for. So there's a time commitment and a financial commitment involved. So if the GRE is optional for your grad program, again, this would be a great conversation to have either in a drop-in or an appointment if you're like, I don't know, should I do it? What if I don't? Yeah, that's totally a regular thing that we can chat through. Okay, specific econ grad programs, I'm sure there are, and I cannot hold that information in my brain. I really wish I had like an encyclopedia of grad and professional school programs in my brain. And I haven't been able to figure out how to max my brain out to do that. But let's see. Okay, I'm going to put a link in the chat to this educanada.ca. This is the one that searches Canadian college and grad programs. So, if you put in economics as the search term, this will bring up all of those results that might be of interest to you. So I would definitely start there. And if you're thinking of programs outside of Canada, I can also locate the link to, it's Find a Master's. Can do that as well, if that's helpful. Okay, hopping back here to our Padlet. Let's see, what do we got here? Would you recommend taking a gap year between undergrad and grad? Ooh, such a great question, comes up all the time. How do you feel about taking a gap year between undergrad and grad? That's my default, right? How do you feel about that? We can totally chat about that again in a drop-in or a booked appointment. There are legitimate reasons for taking a gap year. And by that, I mean literally any reason is legitimate. Maybe you want a break. Maybe you want, I don't know, I guess traveling might be a thing at some point again. Maybe you want to relocate your body in time and space. Maybe you want to work. I don't know, maybe you have another commitment to yourself. So whether or not you take a gap year, totally up to you and tied specifically to what you want. And I think I said this before, but whether you're a current student or an alumni, you can access further education support. So if you're an alumni, you absolutely have access to booked appointments with either myself or Eden. Same with as a current student. Okay. I feel like we covered how to select a grad program. Online resources to help you with research. I'm not sure if that means like researching grad programs or maybe finding research experience. In terms of researching grad programs, I would maybe, if you're thinking Canada, start here with the educanada.ca. If you, I don't know, where do you want to live for like a year and a half, 2 years of your life? That is kind of where my mind thinks to start. I stayed in Waterloo region for my grad school because it was important to me. I have family connections here. I have a community here, and it was important for me. I needed to stay to maintain those connections to my community, my family. But other folks are like, I want to see what it's like to live, I don't know, in BC for a year, or maybe out east or Manitoba. That would be my first choice because I don't love winter. So, yeah, resources that can help you research, definitely Google searching and that database searching. Okay. Yes to OSAP for grad school programs. What else? I want to go into counseling, but don't want a PhD. Is there a good program at UW for that? That's a great question. I would probably be looking either in, I mean, the School of Social Work, I would be looking there. And I know their master's programs, there's like some prerequisite, like you need a bachelor's of social work usually to move into their graduate programming. I'm trying to think of anything specific at UW for that. I don't think so, and I could be wrong. There might be other ways that you get at that topic of counseling. It really might depend on what type of degree do you want and what type of career do you want to get into. Because I'm thinking like, topics in and around counseling, you might find, a program in the Faculty of Health. You might find a program in sociology. You might even find a program in, I don't know, I'm in the Department of English, and there's some really interdisciplinary like work that goes on there. But at the end of the day, you'd come out with a master's in English, not necessarily something in counseling. And there could be ways to get at that particular topic. So yeah, I definitely think, a conversation is a really great way to explore maybe what's at Waterloo or elsewhere. Are there more online master's programs in the works? I would think so. And I don't know specifically at Waterloo. And I think the last 2 years has been a really great learning opportunity for universities and colleges to figure out how can we continue delivering hybrid models or fully online. So yeah, I'm sorry, that doesn't probably really answer your question. And probably there are online masters. Is SDS considered for a master's of social work? That's a really great question. I don't know where that, okay, right here. Oh, sorry, master's in social and legal studies. Yeah, so my guess would be, here's what I'm guessing. And
I did answer in the chat. I know for in terms of master of social work, you can apply with any 4-year degree. However, they do prefer a Bachelor of Social Work degree. So if you do have that, that'll help you more than SDS, but it doesn't mean you can't just get in with SDS.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. I'm seeing, okay, 2 questions here. So one for Master of Social Work and then one for Social and Legal Studies. I would think for Sociology and Legal Studies that it's pretty open-ended. I could be wrong. I'd have to look at the program website, individual program website to be sure. And oftentimes for degrees like that, they're looking for more of a, either, I don't know, like there's a wider scope in terms of, disciplinary background that folks bring to this. And I don't know, I could definitely see an SDS degree setting you up well for a master's in social and legal studies. But yeah, we could totally chat about that in an appointment. If you find a supervisor, is that a guaranteed acceptance to a program? Love this question. Okay. Yeah, this is like the tricky thing about grad school admissions, because who the heck knows what goes on behind the curtain. Some programs will say somewhere on their website, you need to have a supervisor lined up to apply. And that can be the softer, like if you have one and you meet all of the admissions criteria, like that can be a pretty positive indication. And I don't want to say for sure, like if you have a supervisor, you're guaranteed to get into the program, because I'm not on that admissions committee. What I know is if programs are saying things like that and your application is competitive from a GPA standpoint, as well as from like a personal statement, letter of intent standpoint, maybe it's from a research proposal standpoint, then that's usually a really positive sign. I mean, if you secured a supervisor to that program, that might be a question for them because they probably have insider knowledge of their own program. So yeah, what I know is it's usually a very positive thing. I don't know if it's a guaranteed thing. What else? Grades. How strictly do they follow the minimum grade requirement? Yeah. So minimum grades for grad school, they do represent the minimum. In grad schools, we'll usually say some version of like, this is the minimum. So just because you hit the minimum doesn't mean you'll get in. And so I don't know. I don't like grades because like you are not your grades. You have so much worth as a person that is not tied in any way to the numerical value of any one grade. So that's my little like on my soapbox moment about grades. And the more you can exceed that minimum grade requirement, the more your application might be more competitive. And I say might because grades are one part of the puzzle for admissions committees to adjudicate applications. For some programs, it's a large part of the puzzle, right? Like maybe it's 75% of the puzzle and the rest, I don't do math. So whatever the rest of, I don't know, what is it, 35? I don't know, who knows? The rest is your personal statement in your letters of reference. Maybe it's an even like 50-50, right? 50% is grades, 50% is everything else. Maybe it's some other combination. You won't ever know. Grad students or grad programs usually don't post on their website their selection formula. Sometimes if you ask, they'll tell you, often they don't. They just say, oh, we look at grades, we look at letters of reference, we look at personal statements. So they are one piece of the puzzle. If you don't meet that minimum GPA, it could still be possible for you to get into the program. And I would think likely reaching out to the program to ask like, hey, I don't meet the minimum requirement. Will I still be considered? Some programs will say, sorry, absolutely not, because they're jerks. And there's other programs that'll be like, yeah, let's chat a little bit more. One additional part of an application might be sometimes programs will leave space for you to address anomalies. And I'm using scare quotes there deliberately because like they're not anomalies. Like over 4, 5, 6, 7 years of an undergraduate degree, like life, you're living your life, and that means things might come up that rightly so disrupt your academic performance, and you're not able to be your best student for a variety of reasons. And that could mean, I don't know, that could impact maybe your overall GPA. And maybe that's the reason why you're applying to grad school, you don't meet that minimum. A lot of times programs will have a space for you to disclose information about that if you want to. You don't owe any grad school admissions committee any sort of information, any sort of story. And if you would like to share something about something that has happened in your life that has impacted your academic performance, you get to choose what you share and how much of that you share. GPA, how do you calculate your GPA? Okay, I have a lovely, I think I already said, Math and I are not best friends. So I'm going to put a link to a GPA calculator in the chat. This works extremely well for Canadian programs, less so for American programs. So you can select your school, the type of grade you're inputting, which in this case is %, and then fill up the columns with the grade you received and the credit weight it's worth, which for most courses at Waterloo is 0.5. And then you can add columns as you need to. Okay. Let's see. I'm seeing some, okay, yeah. So maybe there's some questions up here about references. So maybe I'm just going to answer these right now. Reference letters, yeah, do they ever expire? I mean, I would say if someone has written you a letter of reference and an application cycle has passed, I would reconnect with that person and say, hey, I'm applying for grad school. Is it okay if I use this letter? Or, is it okay if I use this letter? Or would you like to connect and see, what I've been up to the past couple of years in case you might want to make some changes to that letter? I would always get permission from your letter writers first. The other reason could be also to get permission. When you actually submit letters of reference, usually they have to be submitted by the referee, not by the applicant. And sometimes they're uploading a PDF of their letter, whereas other times they are like filling out, like copying and pasting into text boxes in an application portal. Oh yeah, COVID has made getting to know references so much harder. So you are not alone. There are many folks in the same circumstance as you. It has definitely made it more difficult, and folks have been applying to grad school the past 2 years, so it is definitely possible. I don't know, how well should you know your references? That might be up to you. I mean, certainly, if you've been able to establish that rapport and you want to use that person, go for it. And I also know a lot of professors, like maybe they were inconsistently holding office hours, or maybe they were just doing email office hours. Maybe there wasn't like opportunity to connect virtually, or like, I don't know, who the heck had like brain space to connect the last 2 years, knowing everything that has gone on because of the pandemic. I would say if you're thinking about grad school and you want to ask a certain person, I would email them and say, hey, thinking about grad school. I'm wondering if we could chat about the possibility of you writing me a letter of reference. I know COVID has made, connection difficult, and I would really value your support in this, right? All you can do is ask. But you're right, super tough. Can you get academic references once you graduate and decide to apply later on? Absolutely. Doesn't matter if one academic term has passed or if like 5 years has passed. I don't know. It's, yeah. Doesn't matter the length of time. I think in either circumstance, whether a term has passed or a number of years, doing that, hey, my name is Becky. I took this 4th-year undergraduate course from you. Here's my last essay that I wrote. Here's the feedback that you provided me. Can we have a conversation about grad school, right? So doing that, reminding of who you are, regardless of the amount of time that has passed. Okay. Apply to grad school in another field. Yeah, that's totally possible. It does happen all the time. I would be reaching out to the program. Let's say if you're applying to a mechanical engineering program and they're like, you need to have a background in mechanical engineering or evidence of a background. I would reach out to the program and say, hey, this is my disciplinary background, digital arts. Here are all the different ways I know I will succeed in this program. Will you actually consider my application? Definitely possible to switch fields, but I would say reach out to the program before you're paying application money to apply. If you're considering a research path, is it beneficial to publish a paper as an undergrad? Yeah, sure. I would say if you have that opportunity to publish and if you have that support, go for it. When I say support, I mean like academic publishing can be a very difficult process to navigate because it isn't always transparent. Sometimes it costs money to publish, and it shouldn't. Like, wait, you want me to pay you money so you can publish my original ideas? It should be the other way around. You should be paying me for my lovely knowledge. It does cost money. and it can take a long time depending on the journal and the number of times they ask you to revise and resubmit. So I feel like the quickest, at least for folks that I know in my grad program, the quickest the quickest time something was published was like maybe 6 months. And the longest was like 2.5, 3 years. So it can be a very long process. And it helps if you have the support of a faculty member or a sessional instructor who has been through that process. If you're doing an undergraduate thesis or if you're involved as like a research assistant in a professor's lab, sometimes it can be possible to get in as a second, third, or fourth author on a paper. So that's also possible. Okay. If you wanted to take a 1 to 2 year break after undergrad before going to grad school, will there still be resources from Waterloo that you have access to? Absolutely. You can meet with someone from the further education team at any point, current student or alumni, for any program that you might be applying to, even if it's not at Waterloo. Okay. I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I know we are officially like over time. So if you're like, time to, I don't know, eat dinner, time to like cuddle my dog, time to like, I don't know, watch, the next episode of the Book of Boba Fett, even though it came out yesterday and I'm a day behind, please feel free. If you feel like now is the time for you to leave, you are welcome to. And I'm going to stay on and continue to answer some of these questions. Graduate scholarships. Yes, there are graduate scholarships. There are lots of different types of graduate scholarships. Do I have a slide about this? I don't think I do. No, okay. I don't have a slide about this. So yeah, there are graduate scholarships. I would say they are in 2 categories. Internal scholarships, so internal to the university or college, and external scholarships, external to the university or college. Internal scholarships, there's usually a database you can search. So if you Google, I don't know, UToronto graduate scholarship database, their database will come up. Same thing with Waterloo. And there are, usually you can search and narrow down those results based on a number of things. It could be based on your discipline. It could be based on your social location. It could be based on, I don't know, academic merit, for example. For external scholarships in Ontario, there is Ontario Graduate Scholarship, or OGS. There is also something called CGSM. Can't remember what the acronym is, but that's federal funding. And for PhD programs, again, there's OGS or NSERC, SHERC, and CIHR funding, depending on what discipline you're in. I could say so much about scholarships. And I would say if you want to chat about that, definitely you're welcome to book a drop-in and chat through, okay, what the heck are these? You're able to apply for OGS and CGSM before you apply to a grad program. And the really lovely thing about that is if you apply and you get that scholarship, oftentimes programs are like, yes, please come and hold that OGS or that CGSM at our department. So it can help in terms of your application, because then the department doesn't have to worry about funding you. Yeah, so I could say a lot more about scholarship stuff. It's like a whole application process. And it can be helpful, particularly for research-based grad programs, that external scholarship, those external scholarship avenues. I would also say, I think I closed the page, but a little while ago, I put a link in the chat to a Google Doc for graduate scholarships. Those are all examples of external scholarships. So some are through hospitals, some are through organizations, some are through businesses. So there's like a wide variety of them, and they range anywhere from like $500 to, I don't know, $1,500, $2,000. The governmental, like provincial and federal funding, is usually a lot more money. So I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I feel like OGS for this year might have been around $15,000. CGSM around 17,000. I could be wrong, but they're definitely a lot more money. They are competitive scholarship applications, though. So there is like, you got to do reference letters, submit a resume, submit like a statement of intent. But if you're already producing all of that for grad school, oftentimes you can pull like elements of your personal statement to use in this funding application, or ask your references like, hey, would you also be willing to submit a reference for OGS, for example. Okay, I'm gonna take a look at all of these. Let's see, when should you do the GRE for a fall start date? Great question. It might depend on when those GRE sessions are being held. So I would definitely be searching GRE test dates, because you'll want to, if you do need to take the GRE, you'll want to make sure that you pick a test date that allows you to send your results to your program in time for the application deadline. Okay, what else do we have in here? What does grad school look like for students in the arts? Great question. It might depend on the university or the program or the department. So, and it might also depend maybe what sort of career you might want to go into. If you're like, I have no idea, that's great, that's cool, that's normal. I would definitely look into booking a career consult at CCA or a career planning appointment to see how maybe your values match up with what careers you might want to get into. But definitely a career in the arts and what grad school might look like. You have course-based programs and you have research-based programs. At Waterloo, there is co-op for grad school. And I don't know, like I'm sure there's internship programs. I think maybe Toronto might have a co-op program at the grad level as well. It's an up and coming thing. So it's been around at Waterloo for a couple of years, and I don't know if that's something that you're like, oh yeah, that's something that I'm looking for. Maybe that's how you narrow down on programs, right? Which grad programs either have co-op or an internship component. But in terms of like, I would say if you love research and you like that creative freedom, maybe you look into research-based master's programs in arts disciplines. A lot of the times you have a lot of agency to determine what you research and how you research that. So, maybe you create something as part of your research. And it's not just strictly, I don't know, 100-page master's thesis or whatever. Okay. Deferrals. So it could be possible to defer your acceptance. It would depend on the individual program, and I would be checking that program website or reaching out to them. I know it's happened in the past, specifically for folks in my department, in my cohort, definitely deferred their acceptance. I don't know the circumstances under which they deferred. I know it is possible, at least in one department at one university, which leads me to believe it's possible elsewhere. And you'd want to connect with the program directly to figure out, your options. Okay, what else? What else? Yeah, finding a school that is true to my values is a bit tricky. Oh, yeah, I feel that. I mean, I would definitely be looking at, I don't know, maybe the curriculum of their program. I might also be looking at, I don't know, what values that university has or that department has specifically. If there's a professor you really want to work with, in terms of the type of degree you do, maybe that's how you decide is who do I want, if I'm doing some sort of grad program that requires I have a supervisor, what supervisor do I want to work with, right? What professor do I want to work with? Probably someone like, again, who you trust, where your values match up, where their approach to mentorship lines up with how you want to be supported. But this would be definitely a great conversation to have for an appointment. Okay, what else? What else? Are there any on here that we haven't chatted about yet? I feel like we might have covered them all. Okay. Maybe I'm gonna stop there and say, I feel like I've answered all of these questions, and I want to make sure if folks want to ask questions and they don't want the answer to be spoken out loud on the recording, maybe this is the time to end the recording. And I can stick around as well for folks who might have